Now, for a long, long time in the 80s, this book is also a story of my own detective search for who was the Antichrist, which started in 1986 during the days of Abu Nidal and Abu Abbas, which also coded. And I show how it's also a story of how a prophet scholar trails links that go nowhere, or in the process you discover a new trail to find this fellow. The other, outside of the Middle East, there's an important thing. I think it really leans towards whoever it is either directly destined to deal with the Middle East or is from the Middle East. I tend to support the latter personally more than the former, that he is a Middle Eastern figure. And he is, in another train in this Infernal Gods of Hannibal prophecy, talks about him being a great terror to all mankind.
And you believe he's already here, he's born.
Yes. We're living in the days of the Antichrist simply because that terror link. Remember earlier in the last hour or two I talked about how you can follow a word and follow it through all the 36,000 words of Nostradamus. And if you follow the word, you start seeing part 2, part 3 of something that was started in a prophecy. Or you find the first part when you started reading it in part 3 or something in a quatrain. And if you follow the trail of the word effrayeur, which means terror, you find a very fascinating dating that comes out of the Roi Effrayeur prophecy that is better known as the 1999 September month prophecy of Century 10, Quatrain 72, which basically you have the terror to all mankind. You have in 1999 September month, a great terror, king of terror descends out of the sky. And, you know, you look at that, the 7th month is no longer September, it's July, because of classical metaphor changes that came from Roman emperors designated their own months. Julius Caesar, July, Augustus Caesar, August. So the 7th month, Septembre, became September. So a lot of us scholars, and probably some of you remember me back in 1999 saying, well, something big's going to happen in July of 1999, and when that didn't...
I remember that.
Yeah, and so that's part of that's the fun about prophecy. It's not just about predicting, it's about solving a mystery. And as you solve a mystery, part of it is you run into dead ends, and then you try another lead, and then finally you find where it's going, or you never find it. And so when that happened, I just said, well, okay, maybe he means, because of the open-endedness of his grammar, that it's 1999, 7 months, meaning 7 months after the end of 1999, which would then bring July of 2000. Well, nothing happened in July 2000. However, in the September of the following year, and we all know what happened then, and it changed the course of history. So since it's such a significant event, and since Nostradamus has always been interested in dating and describing significant events of the last 4.5 centuries, I started to take a new look of late at that prophecy and say, you know, this 1999 September month is trying to tell me something in a code. It's not literal. This 1999 may be a reverse of 9111 September month. That would make it September 11th, 01, O is silent and gone, September month. So,
what about the blue turban person we've heard so much about?
It's good we talk about this, because this is kind of a dead lead in certain ways. The term in French is a blue head. It's not turban. In the prophecy. So it's probably talking about something where Nostradamus is trying to describe something in the Middle East dealing with UN forces. Blue head could be a blue hat, by extension a blue cap. You could say a blue turban, but a lot of people have tried to say this is a description of the Taliban or the Al-Qaeda. But actually they wear black turbans. If they're blue, it's probably because the dye washed out. But it's supposed to be black. Because actually the color of if one studies Islamic apocalyptic prophecy, which is quite a rich tradition, which I'm planning to write a book about in the near future, there's a prophecy that's attributed to Muhammad in the Hadith, that is his conversations about daily life of Islamic disciples, and it described that in the future, he described an area Khorasan, which is the ancient name for what is Afghanistan and the western areas of Pakistan, the wild tribal regions, as a source of a great Islamic crusade that would go all the way to Israel, of people who had black turbans, who flew the black flag of Muhammad. Now, either the Al-Qaeda and Taliban people who are also aware of that prophecy are trying to pretend to self-fulfill it by wearing black turbans and bearing the black Al-Qaeda flag, sometimes with white letters, Arabic letters, sometimes with gold, as in the Al-Qaeda in Mesopotamia, which was what Abu Musab al-Zarqawi, who was a major candidate for the third Antichrist, because Musab is a switch around of Mabas. Abu, there it is again with a dropped S and M. But again, in this book, I try to educate people on how even somebody who sounds too good to be true doesn't mean that's who it is, because of course he died, and it's important to say that the prophecy about Mabas is, the hard part is the first word in the prophecy, the famous prophecy that mentions Mabas in it. Mabas will soon die. Then will come a terrible undoing of people and animals. And defay in the use of this is a very complicated word that opens the door to not only death and destruction, but economic breakdown like we're seeing now, ecological breakdown, climate change. It's an unraveling of order. It's kind of a balkanization of the world. It's supposed to happen around the time this man dies, and it's his death. Just finish the point quickly. It's his death that unlike the other two antichrists, it's his death that triggers a 25 to 27-year war.
But is it a death, and does he come back again?
No, that's the tradition of the Book of Revelation.
Right. Because I always thought, well, maybe, who could it be? Maybe it could be Osama bin Laden, maybe Ariel Sharon, who is still in a coma.
Well, here's the interesting thing. It could be somebody who's dead already. It may very well be that Saddam Hussein is the man that Nostradamus intended. Here's the other pitfalls of this. We all have this assumption that Nostradamus always got it right. I mean, people are blindly believing into him and not too skeptical. Of course, all the people who are skeptical think he can't get anything right, and that's equally silly. The truth is that he was a human being, and like all of us who try to interpret the future, he had to interpret his own prophecies. And we have to find out what Nostradamus thought was the Antichrist, not who you and I would think.
That's right. Well, that's where you come in.
Yeah, and the thing is, it's very intriguing. There's many more things in the book that support this, but I'll just share this one little thing out of the book, is that Saddam Hussein came to power. The third Antichrist is supposed to be annihilated. In 27 years, his bloody war will last. And he talks about blood-soaked human bodies and an icy hail covering the earth. And the French, it sounds like it's an image of chemical weaponry, as the way I describe it, as one possible interpretation. Now, Saddam Hussein, when he came to power, and the era of Saddam Hussein started when he came to power, and in his entire life from that point on until he was hung at the end of 2006, was a life that saw or was responsible directly in Iraq for perpetual warfare. If he wasn't fighting with his neighbors, Iran or Kuwait, he was fighting a perpetual civil war with the Kurds, and he was also more than once fighting a civil war with the Shia as well. And so his entire legacy, his era of Saddam Hussein, was nothing but a bloody war. And guess what? It lasted 27 years.
27 years. Good point.
Now, in another part of the prophecies of Nostradamus, one segment of a prophetic letter called the Epistle to Henry II, King of France, that was written at the same time that he wrote this prophecy about the 27 years, because that's quatrain 77 of century 8.